Well, I want to thank the New Mexico Trial Lawyer Association for this recognition and actually an invitation to revisit the joys of the past that have helped shape my conscience. First, I should thank Tony Anderson for filming this for me. And I also want to thank the Sandia Event Center for hosting this, and also for their wonderful staff that have put this all together. And of course, I guess I should thank David and Damon for the introduction, although I got to tell you that I have no idea what they said. For all I know, they roasted me, and here I am thanking them. But that's the way it goes, especially with Damon. You know, he likes to tease me because I am so much younger than he is. But it doesn't matter. I love these guys. David and Damon are the most loyal friends, and I think a lot of you understand their loyalty. But more than that, they are so generous with their time. David, for as long as I've known him, has always helped lawyers. They'll call him up and he'll help them think through legal issues, help them with research, help them come up with the most persuasive argument possible. I used to tease him that lawyers in New Mexico did their research by calling him, and that still may be true, I don't know. But now David is sharing his genius with the law students at the law school, teaching them about reflective reading and the importance of oral advocacy and the written advocacy. But not only that, as a person, David always wants to help somebody in need, in particular those people who are struggling with life's challenges. And Damon is the same thing. His work as both a lawyer and a legislator has been remarkable and inspiring. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that when he was in the legislature, he was a go-to legislator. The young and new legislators would come in and he would help them navigate the process. He would unselfishly work with people so that they could be the prime sponsors of legislation. The leadership looked to him for advice. And despite the fact that Damon was Democrat, he freely reached across the aisle with other people to do what was right for all New Mexicans. And yet, even though he's no longer in the legislature, he's still volunteering his work, trying to solve complex issues, particularly trying to make a material difference in the life of the marginalized. These are wonderful guys, and I love them dearly. And of course, I should and do want to acknowledge Sandra, who has been my wife now for 45 years, my best friend, my anchor, my CEO, not boss, but chief encouragement officer. Sandra has been with me, 45 years, and since before law school, and she was with me when I was blessed with the inspiration of Dean Hart, who wanted the legal community to reflect the diversity of our great state. And when I was told, because I was an affirmative action law student, that it was likely that I would not pass the first semester and probably wouldn't pass law school even after the first year, she, who was expecting our first child, told me, don't worry about it. Just roll up your sleeves and prove them wrong. And when I got the bright idea of wanting to leave a very successful practice with Bill Carpenter and David Stout to go to what Bill used to refer to as a government job, she didn't blink. Her support was unwavering, even though she understood it was questionable whether or not I could do it, and whether or not I could meet the challenges, not to mention the huge pay cut. So Sandra, I love you and thank you for your support all these years. You know, I grew up in Santa Fe, but I also worked weekends and summers on small family ranches in San Miguel and Torrance County, and it was all of these life experiences that made me grateful for the mere accident of having been born in America. It's a republic where liberty reigns supreme. The liberty to speak, to worship, to control your own destiny. But along with that liberty, we have the responsibility to make sure that other people's liberty is available to them and respected. And in fact, what's beautiful about America is we have the freedom to make an injustice, to correct an injustice, to be the thorn in the side of injustice. And that's actually where my love for being a trial lawyer comes into play. Because if you stop and think about it, if it weren't for trial lawyers, our courts would be nothing more than a playpen for the rich. But instead, because we have trial lawyers, those who are victimized as a result of, it could be sudden and unexpected tragedies, it could be victimization by an oppressive government or defective products or medical negligence, they have access to our courts because of trial lawyers. And to me, that's very important. And that's a way that we as trial lawyers can remedy injustices in society. But we have to remember that justice is really a community project. And we as trial lawyers participate in that project. But if you stop and think about it, we call ourselves trial lawyers. The community gets to participate directly in this community project we call justice when they serve as jurors. And when we preserve and fight for the right to jury trials and civil litigation, that's what makes a big difference. When we try cases to jurors, fellow citizens, they have the awesome responsibility of deciding what level of care they're going to expect from each other, what level of care they're going to expect from professionals or product manufacturers. And they'll also tell us what they believe a reasonable compensation is for injuries and what punitive damages might be necessary. And they've been given the awesome power in the past to even sentence somebody to death or declare that they should receive the death penalty. So they have an awesome responsibility that we have to respect, and we should continue to work hard to try jury cases. When I stop and think about the history of trial lawyers, I think that without trial lawyers, we would probably still have flammable pajamas for kids. We would still have exploding gas tanks. We would still have vehicles that were unstable and didn't have rollover protection. We would have guardrails that acted like spears if you ran into them. All sorts of defects would still be in existence. And so I think my message to trial lawyers is not just that money for your client is important, and it is, because they'll have their medical needs and other needs that require compensation. But you can use the tools you have to promote safety in our society. And the way you do that is by insisting on changes to policies, procedures, the designs of products, the warnings of products, lobbying the legislature for legislation that will make a meaningful difference to safety in our society. And that's all an important tool to have. And as far as the association goes, the New Mexico Trial Lawyer Association, I mean, their work with the Amicus Committee has been incredible. And David Stout has played a significant role in that for the last 3 decades at least. And my first interaction with the New Mexico Trial Lawyer Association occurred when I was a law clerk for Justice Dan Sosa. I was assigned the case of Wells versus County of Valencia. And that was a case where Phil Davis, a brilliant lawyer, left us way too soon, had filed a lawsuit in federal court, a 1983 action, along with a claim under the New Mexico Tort Claims Act, because his client had been incarcerated in Valencia County in a dark cell with a hole in the middle of the floor. And he tripped in that and suffered severe and permanent neurological injuries. Well, Judge Campos certified a question to the New Mexico Supreme Court, and his question was, well, if a plaintiff brings a 1983 action, can they still bring a New Mexico Tort Claims action case, or are they prohibited from that? And it was Leof Strand who filed a brief on behalf of the New Mexico Trial Lawyer Association, made it crystal clear that they are distinct concepts, that not every constitutional violation results in tortious conduct and vice versa. They're distinct. And so the answer to the question is yes, you may file both a Tort Claims Act and a 1983 action, in that case in particular. And so that was my first introduction to the trial lawyers. And I thought it was brilliant that there was an organization that gathered plaintiffs' attorneys and helped them with their appellate cases. My next interaction was after I was a law clerk and a partner with a couple of law school buddies, Steve Torres and Virgil Lewis. I had a products liability case, and I had worked at Bruce Hall was my opponent on the other side, and I imagined that. What a gentleman, but what a terrific lawyer. Anyway, it was getting close to time for trial, and we had a settlement conference scheduled, and I thought, well, I should probably run this case by an experienced lawyer because I may not be going down the right path. And so I don't remember why it was, but I called Steve Durkovich cold. He had no clue who I was. I told him who I was and that I would like to visit with him about a case I have that's coming up to trial. And he said, well, we'll come right over. I just finished jogging and I've got some time. And he had a house as his office. Something in my memory says it was on 11th Street. Anyway, I show up at his office, and I go in his office, and throws his feet up on top of the desk, and he says, tell me your client's story. So I told him all about Doy Adams and how he was electrocuted while working on an oil rig, and it was an indoor use light that he was told to move by his bosses, and there's mud gushing all over the place, and he grabbed it, he's electrocuted, dies. And I explained my theory of the litigation, and he took his feet off the desk and he looked at me and he said, well, you got a barn burner. Well, I grew up working on small family ranches, and the barns we used had hay, and they had places for the saddles. That's where we milked the cows, and I didn't see anything good about a barn burning. So I asked him what was wrong with the case, and he reassured me that a barn burner means that it's a great deal. I guess for city slickers, a burning barn is a good thing. But anyway, he took the time to go through that case with me, make sure that I had my elements correct. And beyond that, at the time he was on the Uniform Jury, Civil Jury Instruction Committee, and they had been working on a wrongful death jury instruction. And he came to my office with what the committee was going to propose to the Supreme Court and the supporting law. And he said, here, argue for this jury instruction when you go to court. That was a model of being a plaintiff's trial lawyer, the unselfishness to help other lawyers represent their clients effectively. And that always meant something to me, and I tried, at least in my career, to be as helpful. And I told you the story about David. I mean, he's incredible, helping people all the time. So trial lawyers are very inspirational. And the last time I think I had anything from them was actually an amicus brief in a case involving farm and ranch workers, probably one of the highest risk employments around. And they were excluded from workers' compensation benefits. And the constitutionality of that exclusion was challenged by the Legal Aid Society. And David Stout and Michael Browdy filed an amicus brief in that case, and it was ultimately ruled to be unconstitutional, rightfully so. Well, I wrote the opinion, so I guess I agree with it. But that's trial lawyers. It's an organization of plaintiffs' lawyers who try to make sure that victims have access to the courts. And they try to advance the law, and I think do a wonderful job of it. So to receive this recognition from the trial lawyers is very meaningful to me. And I thank you again for the recognition and the honor.